Hello, everybody. Grant Hunter here with another Product Growth Leaders topic of the week. And for those people who participate, our regulars who listen a lot, you realize sometimes my inspiration for our topics and our questions come from social media and the product spheres and LinkedIn and Twitter. And this one is the same. This week, we're going to be talking about product sense. Product sense is something that actually I did a quick poll of our panelists today, and only one person knew what it was before the question, and he just learned about it this year. But it's a topic that you're seeing a lot of people talk about, especially with regards to like interviewing for product jobs at Facebook and Google and that type of stuff, and people trying to judge for, do people have product sense? And so we've got a wonderful panel here to talk about this thing that is, we think is the thing that is product sense. And with us today, Paul Hatala, Brian Weber, Joy McCaffrey, Cory Bryan, and of course, my partner, Steve Johnson. So on Monday, actually on Tuesday, I put the question in the community. What is product sense and how can product managers improve their product sense? And Jason Vincelet came in quickly, perhaps not academic, but my opinion of product sense is the ability to think about products and features in the terms of what problems do they solve. A product manager with deep product sense will ask why when talking about features and products versus just what. And Jason is almost like our zealot when it comes to market problem focus. Everything for Jason comes back to market. I wish he was here to talk about it. The second answer came in from Paul Hatala. Paul, you said, to paraphrase Austin Yang's post, it's the thing that you get good at when you practice the craft of product management. Talk to me about finding that and your thoughts about product sense after reading Austin Yang and the other posts here.
I proceeded to look through some of his other content around this, and it just continued to build on this idea that when you do all of the holistic things that make up product management, you develop product sense. And it just seemed like an unnecessary redefinition of the craft.
It's like if you're an experienced product manager who's built some good intuition for making decisions or even processes, you have product sense. It's this mystical thing.
Yeah, it's a term that didn't need to be crafted to describe something that already exists.
Well, isn't that what thought leaders do?
To get clicks, yes.
So, Jason Weber said, product sense is an interesting term. I liken it to the intuition of smelling what might be a good idea to pull a thread on, which roads you shouldn't travel further down. And Brian Weber, I'm going to go to you because so far we've had a Jason and a Jason Weber. So, what's your take? You came in, 50% of the answers this week were from a Jason or a Weber. And if Jason Weber was here, he could sort of talk for everybody. But Brian's going to be the person we go to. You said you related to looking at everything as a product and trying to understand it.
Yeah, product sense was a new term to me. I had never heard of it before. I did no research before my answer. And to me, product sense is understanding products, thinking about things as products. So, and I went a little deeper, not just saying there's a product, but building off Jason Vincelet of why and what, but then what were the constraints? What were the assumptions? Why did they build it the way they did? So just understanding from Paul, understanding the whole product management process is kind of what went into it for me.
Okay, I love it. May Wong said, I always go back to the idea of knowing what you don't know. It's impossible to know everything. So acknowledging the gaps and making appropriate risks is a huge part of doing product management. So knowing how to take those educated risks and how to do that type of stuff. I could see that being something that's sort of intuition toned to do that. Cory Bryan, you said you like Jules Walter's answer, consistently being able to craft products or make changes to existing products that have the intended impact on their users. Talk to me about your take on this.
I hadn't heard of the term either. And when Lenny's newsletter came out in February, that was the featured post was Jules. And I read the whole post. I love the whole idea and I love the concept around it. One of the things that stuck in my mind is there's a difference between product sense and product arrogance, which is I know what's best for the customers versus I have a good feeling that this will test well with our customers. I think there's
I like that idea of sense versus arrogance. And
yeah. So
we'll get to that in the poll.
yeah, I like those. I like the idea of it. I like the things that he talks about doing to get better at it. The thing that I found that improves my understanding of product or product sense, however you want to phrase it, is to get into your customer's world and find out why their product makes sense in your world. Maybe it doesn't. But what are the frustrating or missing things that they wish they had, not only from your product, but from their job? And how does your product fit into that?
All right, I love that. And actually, I will say, and it's in the community. I'll put, when I post this, I'll make sure I put the links to the Lenny's newsletter with Jules Walter, but also the Austin Yang post that Paul had said. I'm going to go to Joy first, then you, Steve, because I would like to get all of these opinions before we give you a chance to opine. Joy, what's your take? This is all new. This is a term you said you hadn't heard of until we put the question out there.
Right. And yeah, I'd never heard it before. And when you posted it, I didn't realize it was a thing until I joined this call before the recording started. And you were all talking about whoever posted, the newsletter. I had to Google it before the recording started. I'm like, this is a thing? Because when you posted it, I'm just like, product sense. It's just being a product manager and getting experience.
Well, so wait a second. That's actually a gem there, because product sense is actually just doing product management.
It's just gaining product sense.
And in too many of these companies, they don't do this business and strategic role of product management. So they think it's something magic when somebody does it right. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
That's Silicon Valley for you.
All right. I love it. All right, Steve, you've gotten a handful of takes. I've got a take in my head, but before I do that, I don't want to, not that I would ever influence Steve's take, at least on this topic, maybe on other topics. But what's your take? What is product sense?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes and to pretty much everything. I think what they're trying to get to is getting away from customization to standardization. I think there are companies still who say, well, big customer X just called and they want purple checks in their Tide instead of blue checks in their Tide detergent. And, they're a big customer, so we're going to do that. Having product sense, it feels to me, is being more standard in the things that you offer. The whole Tide thing threw you, didn't it, Cory? I'm sorry.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too.
I was going consumer, but we'll just edit that out later. But the idea of creating a product instead of creating a toolkit that can be configured into anything you want. I think the people at Lego, here we go. Here's consumer. People at Lego
I think
have
I already know
product
your answer.
sense.
Yeah.
I think the people at Lego have real product sense. They have figured out that, everybody buys a Lego box and then they don't use them. And then everybody buys a Star Wars kit and we all build them. And if you haven't, it's really fun. But now the product sense at Lego says, what we're now building is three-dimensional puzzles, as opposed to here's a big bunch of blocks.
Go do something.
And so I think that is product sense.
Okay.
But ultimately, looking at it from the standpoint of business rather than the standpoint of a customer asked me for something, let me fill out a Jira ticket.
Cory, you look like you want to say something.
He hates everything I said, including the Lego kits.
Well, the face started with Joy making the comment about Silicon Valley, and I don't.
There's so many Tide Pod references I want to make now, but I'm not going to. But I'm listening. I'm trying to process and think through what this. I agree with the notion of it's understanding what the customers are trying to do. The notion of the specialist delivery versus the general product. I like that sense of, yes, we're trying to build general product sense. We're not trying to deliver for a customer. I like that. The box of puzzles Lego analogy has me thinking I don't know what yet, but I'm thinking.
Well, maybe it was just me. I mean, I remember getting Legos as a kid, and it was like, wow, here's a whole bunch of things I can make a big square or a big cube, and that's all I can figure out. And then I set them aside. And then 25 years later, my daughter gave me a Star Wars little ship, the Millennium Falcon. It was like this big with two little men in it, Han and the Wookiee and Chewbacca. There we go. And it was a delight because it was a product and it wasn't a toolkit.
Are you saying you don't super glue your Star Wars Lego sets together, Steve?
I do not
Put them on your
superglue.
shelf? What's wrong with you?
But
Isn't
I
that
do
from
have them on
isn't
my
that from a
shelf.
Lego,
I'll get them in a
movie?
moment.
That's from a
I
Lego
put them on
movie,
my
isn't it?
shelf, but I don't super glue them together.
Oh, okay.
So I would be interested. I'm going to pivot this a little, but you guys know me and Drucker, and I have to get at least one Drucker reference. And then obviously Drucker never wrote about product sense, or we would have been talking about it already. But he talks about the practice of management, right? And he says that, management is a practice, and we look at it as product management as a practice. And to me, it seems like everything we're talking about is product sense is just being good at the practice of product management. We know how to do discovery and understand market problems and the who, the what, the why, right? So we are good at product sense is we're good at segmentation, right? Finding the right segments to go to and understanding their problems. We're good at prioritization, picking the right problems to solve to deliver a solution. And we're good at enabling our organization, our creation side, right? Development, design, delivery,
To
whatever.
develop
To develop
products.
to deliver those things, right?
Nice.
Drucker talked about marketing, and we think it's product management is the aim of knowing and understanding the customer so well your product or service fits them and sells itself, and innovation about how do we create new value added stuff. So product sense to me is almost doing that, right? How do we make sure we understand the customer so well and their problems so well, we can identify what things will create new value for them, for the market, and in turn for our company. So before I put that sort of is product sense just being good at product practice, I'm going to go to Cory, whose hand is raised.
So Steve sparked an idea or an analogy that I want to make, a poor analogy that I want to try to make, which is I'm thinking about this in terms of chefs. And I did this because I just did something in my kitchen this week that's similar to that, which is a chef looks at a couple of ingredients and says, I'm trying to produce this type of a dish. Let me see, this is the basic way to do it, but here's a different way to do it. I can combine these types of ingredients. I can produce this type of thing. I can serve it like this. Maybe people would like that. Maybe they wouldn't, but I have a good idea, a good sense that they would, and I'm going to try it out. And to me, that's kind of what this is coming back to is I have a feeling that we should be going this way with this type of a offering, and let's see if it works or not.
So it's educated intuition, which is really what product management is about.
I like that. Yeah.
I mean, my wife.
There we go. I'm good with that. Educated intuition.
Yeah. My wife, to your point in the kitchen, my wife bakes and doesn't use measuring cups.
Ugh.
Right? I couldn't do
Wow.
that, but she has that, she made for the basic, for the 3 cups of flour, but for everything else, it's just to feel. Same when she's cooking. She hasn't, she is cooked enough. I'm trying to carry your analogy on here. Why I don't know, but she's cooked enough that she has enough experience that her educated intuition is really going into work. She is, I know I've got to feel. I know, maybe I'll take
And
it
the customers we're used to working with would appreciate this because I know the customers so well, as opposed to I go to an Italian place and they say, oh yeah, we're also offering Thai food and tacos now. And you're like, dude, you're freaking me out. I want Italian food. That's why I came to an Italian place.
Italian, Thai food and tacos. That means you're at a Cheesecake Factory, right? Sorry.
A place that I would never go of that.
Yeah. So it just came out of my head, but educated intuition. So if product sense is educated intuition, it's part having the practice down. How do we do that? And it's part building up some domain expertise. So could you take product sense from one domain to a different domain and automatically be successful at it, or do you need to build that domain success? I have an answer for this, and I'm leading it, so I'm going to stop. If you have product sense, can you pick that up and take it to a new place and use it, or is that just taking product practice? Paul, what do you think?
As someone who's jumped from industry to industry, I think there's a great deal of stuff that transfers over. And I'm looking at a scribble that I made after Austin Yang basically copied Lenny's newsletter, but changed the graphics and added a note about the ability to advance a product with incomplete information. And I think that's when it starts getting into sort of that, can you quickly piece together a canvas and have the context of here's the puzzle pieces I need to put together. And I don't know these, but I can get the answer somewhere and be able to keep advancing it from one step to another. So there might be a little something to that.
So it's almost product sense as one part being good at the practice of product management and one part building the domain knowledge so you can make those intuitive decisions.
It's the efficiency that comes with the practice.
I love that. Well, we're getting somewhere I didn't expect to get. I wasn't sure if this was going to be a rant call but I feel like we're doing a pretty good job. Brian, we're talking through all this stuff right now. What's your take?
I love the educated intuition. That's really hitting it for me of, being so good at what you do that you have a sense of where you should be going. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'm sort of building this out. Joy, what about you?
I think of product sense like everyone. It's common sense. It's built on your experience, successes and failures that you've learned from. And yes, of course, the longer you work on a particular product, you gain product domain knowledge, but there's also just product management.
Well, so Angela Lee Duckworth, who wrote Grit, defined grit as the combination of perseverance and passion over time. I think that's what it was. I should know this better because I graduated high school with her. But I'm almost looking at product sense as being the combination of product practice and domain knowledge over time. Because the domain knowledge helps with that sense, the intuition. We might be able to, as you go from irrigation equipment to electric motors, it changes, right? Steve, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm reflecting on the number of people who come up to me and say, I've never been a product manager before and I'd like to be a product manager. How do I get a job at one of the FANG companies? And I'm like, there's so much to unpack there, but I'm wondering aloud if based on this conversation, the challenge these people are having is that they don't have product sense. They don't have experience. They don't have intuition. They've got book learning at best.
I like
Notice
that.
I said book learning with the apostrophe at the end.
I got it.
Spoken like a real street smart guy.
You are. That's exactly when I think of street smart guys. You're the first person I think of, Steve. Let me just do a quick casual poll. I'm just going to go around. What percentage of the decisions you make in product management do you think come down to intuition versus pure data? Cory. Or how much of your decision making is from intuition versus data? How would you weight that?
Oh,
that's a better question.
60, 40 intuition.
60 data, 40, 60 intuition, 40 data?
Yeah.
Okay. How would you weight when you make a decision? How much of it, Brian, is based on intuition versus data?
I'm thinking more 80 intuition, 20 data.
Okay. Paul.
I think it's a trick question. I use the intuition to get the data,
Okay.
that I use it to formulate the question and then let someone validate or disprove my intuition.
So you're intertwining data and intuition. You can't pull them apart the way you're looking at it.
It's a funnel of zigzagging back and forth till you get to where you need to be.
Okay. Joy.
Yeah, I would say well, first of all, it depends.
Oh, finally we get to that.
I mean, sometimes you can just go with intuition. Like, good God, I'm not going to gather data to prove that we need to add address line 2.
It's a known, right?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, we're just going to do that. Let's just move forward. But for bigger decisions, I would say I start with intuition and I have to use data to support it or it will not move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be able to prove that I have data supporting my intuition. And then I present that and we move forward.
And that's but that's where we come to, I have anecdotal information that supports my intuition, maybe not quantitative or objective to do it. Steve.
Well, I joke about salespeople say I talked to a guy, which for them is a completed research study. But I think that's what I do. I talk to a guy who says it would be great if you did X, Y, and Z. And I go, hey, that's not stupid. That's a pretty good idea. So now I've got one person who gave me an insight. I'm applying my intuition to it, but I still need some data to back it up. Let me do a survey. Let me go talk to 3 more people. Based on talking to those 3 more people, my idea changes. Now let me do a different, A/B test. And so, as we've said, I think each feeds the other. You do qualitative. Well, let me go back.
It's like a double helix.
The guy. Yeah. But I'm thinking of the guy who's Ed McQuarrie said, the problem with surveys is you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So you do an interview and you go, wow, I didn't know that. Here's somebody who said an interesting thing. Let's now do a survey to validate that. So it's a continuous discovery, validation, discovery cycle.
So my answer would have been probably close to Brian, 80% intuition, 20% data. To me, it's like 3 to 5 interviews. If I'm seeing that trend and I can start pulling those things out in the 3 to 5, I often made the decision even without the validation. If I were to go back as a young kid doing it, I would tell myself to do that validation because before you spend $1 million, make sure that you've tested it in the market. But that's how it was when I was a director of product management and doing those decisions.
But when in our own business, we come up with an idea, both of us go, that sounds pretty good. And based on our
hunch,
inspired, what did you call it earlier?
Educated hunch.
No, the other
educated
one.
Intuition.
Yeah, that one. We go, I bet that would work. And the cost is not $1 million. The cost is, maybe we're going to lose 6 people from a mailing list who get tired of me hounding them about, an upcoming event.
Yeah.
But it doesn't cost us that much. So let's do an experiment. And do it as a product. And hey, if you will, the MVP doesn't get accepted, then we won't do that again. Or next time around, we'll say, well, maybe we need more than 16 minutes to promote this thing before we go live, so on and so forth. But our decisions aren't $1 million decisions.
Yeah, no, it's true. And probably the more data, you probably need a little more validation and data, the bigger the decision is. I can easily see that. I took a course called marketing engineering in grad school, and it was like, how do you bring scientific method and data into making marketing decisions, which was pretty cool. And the first day of class,
I would have thought that would be an oxymoron.
Yeah, marketing engineering.
Yeah.
But it was a pretty cool course, teaching all these techniques. And the teacher said, somebody did a study, and this is one of the things where I have no idea, I can't find it anymore, but it was like, the success rate of a purely intuitive decision in this study was like 30%. The success rate of a purely database decision was like 40%. And the success rate of Paul, who combines data and intuition, was like 65 or 70%. And it's like, you need both to do it. So, any last thoughts before we go to our...
Well, I want to pick on data for a second. I do find myself having a really negative reaction when I hear people use the term, we make data-driven decisions. I vastly prefer the phrase data-informed.
Yeah. Because it's still somebody making a decision. It's not just like we are, well, unless you're an algorithm.
Yeah.
Right. If you're letting the algorithm do it, it's purely data driven. But
AI is here.
We need some insight in that type of stuff. Paul, you raised your hand briefly. Brian.
Yep. I was just wondering, so do we go back to, as you get more product sense, you lean towards intuition than data? So when you don't have the product sense, you lean on all the data to get it. But now as you get more product sense, your intuition's better and you're relying on that more.
Yeah. I think that's what this is, is talking about. The more you do something, the more you can anticipate and have better intuition about things. I feel good. I didn't think this conversation would be as deep as it was for this first question, but I've enjoyed it. Any last comments before we move to the poll? All right. And this week we did the unique poll. We haven't done the heat map in a long time. And normally when we do a heat map, it means that I have no idea how do I get four questions or four answers out of a question. And I think I could, after we did this call, I probably could go back and do it. But we asked, how would you rate your product sense? And that little blue thing at the end was actually somebody who messed up and clicked before they got to where they wanted to be. And where they wanted to be was probably right in the middle of that thing at the top, right? It seems like we're all pretty confident in our product sense. And the question I have, I'm not even going to ask you where you were because everybody was pretty close to each other. Is this the arrogance that we talked about earlier?
Well, you look pretty high there, Grant. You
Well, I am moving to Denver. Oh, wait, sorry. Different high.
You're pretty
I know. I acknowledge that. But I also am willing to acknowledge that, there could be some hubris and arrogance in this.
More importantly, I would say that's a terrible UI because I just rated my product sense at like 5 because I was trying to, activate the graph and boom, I voted. So
I did on my iPad, and when I took my finger off, that was my vote.
Yeah, so I would say the data is erroneous.
So the person who developed this maybe didn't have good product sense.
Yes.
Sure, I can live with that.
But
I would say it's a design flaw, not a problem flaw.
Okay, I
not
like
a requirements flaw.
But we've talked about this in other calls. Is hubris an issue with product management?
Sure. It's an issue with everybody, or at least every American I've met.
All right. I'm not going to.
Sorry, I didn't mean to shut down the whole conversation there. I just threw that stink bomb right at it,
Boy, Steve comes in with a very definitive answer, and everybody just says, okay. So I'm going to say okay and move on away from this because not a lot of debating because I can't win at anything or lose at anything and can't be contrarian outside of maybe acknowledging that I can have some hubris or, whatever. First question. Is product sense more about the problem or the solution? A lot of the answers on Monday were focused on the problem side of it. But a lot of these people talking about product sense is like, oh, it's that I automatically can know what the solution is. Is product sense more about the problem or the solution? Cory?
Problem.
Problem? So better understanding of the problem is where product sense comes in.
Yes, I could have a really good solution that works well, it's designed well, it flows well, that doesn't solve the problem, and that's why.
Okay, so if you don't do a good job with the problem, then the solution may be the wrong solution because you didn't do a good job up front.
Yep.
Okay. Brian?
Both and neither.
Okay, you have to go deeper on this.
Well, as we talked about, product sense is doing good product management.
Mm-hmm.
Good product management involves problem and solution.
So back
If
to
you
my
have-
Drucker of knowing and understanding the customer so
Yep.
well, and being innovative in how you create value solutions that create value.
Yep.
I love it. I do like that. Joy.
Okay, I'm going to be snarky and say my solution does solve the problem. So,
Well, but that's what I actually. You gave me a place I wanted to dig in. Some of product sense product sense is having a good critical thinking to have an idea of what is the right solution. I've got a backup data problem on my computer, right? I need to back up my data. For me, Dropbox or OneDrive or whatever are good for me. My mom, she thinks she wants that backup on site. She doesn't trust the cloud thing. And so part of it is knowing the right solution for that segment or persona. There's some sort of product sense in there. So
Yes.
that gets to the solution side of it. So I can see that. Paul, you're on mute.
I'm clicking on a different window there. I keep coming back to the problem the more I think about this. And when I think about things that I've done that have been wildly successful, it's come down to saying, here's why we are or are not winning business. And to steal from Roger Martin, how would we go about doing this rather than saying that, oh, what we need to have is things that look like Legos, but be able to say that, no, what people want to do is have things that fit together in this way. I have some ideas of how we might accomplish this, but let the people that are way smarter than you on building stuff, build stuff.
It's interesting because so many times product sense is done with analogs, right? We are the Uber for, right? Our solution is like this, but a reference point, is part of it doing that. Cory, you said, I like what you put in the chat. It's more about where I lost my chat. What did you say?
The question is more about the problem or more about the solution, not either or at the exclusion of the other one. It's both, but which one is more important?
It's not binary. I completely, totally agree with that. Steve.
Well, we've been talking about product sense in the context of product management, which is why we're skewing on the side of problem, I think. We could escalate that though and say, I think that developers tend to have a product sense rather than a services sense. Professional services tends not to have a product sense. I was working with a team recently and they said, we've got all these resources that we sell based on how many of these resources do you want to buy? And I said, well, what problems do they solve? And they had never thought about services as being something you could package. And salespeople always think of everything as custom. As soon as you get involved, they're like, oh, but we could change that. We've got these 5 pieces, but if you want these 4 other pieces, I'm sure I could go to the Lego factory and just get those pieces from the nerds in the Nerdordium. But I think in general, we've been talking about this in the context of problem. In terms of product management, but I would ultimately want everyone in a company to have a product sense.
So I'm going to use that.
How do we make this repeatable?
So that goes to the question, and Steve didn't even see these questions. So it was a perfect transition. Is product sense something a person has or a team? So all these thought leader people talking about product sense really talk about, do you as a person, can you interview somebody to have product sense? But to this, it's more about either or. No one person delivers a successful solution on their own. It's product management with design, with development, all coming together. And maybe it's not an individual thing. I've been reading this book, 7 Powers, about strategy, is talking about the brain trust at Pixar. And how it was not just, they had a creative, they had a tech person, and they had a business person. Steve Jobs, Lasseter, and I can't remember the tech person who made all the animation work. But they needed all 3 of those people to make it work. And in a way, That's what a product management unit would be, right? Or a product unit would be a product manager, a designer, and a developer, right? A development lead.
Mhm.
Is this a team thing more than a person thing? Cory.
It's like any other skill that your team needs. If it's design, development, testing, engineering, marketing, whatever, somebody on the team needs to have a good sense of what product is and what products would solve these problems with these solutions, whatever, whether that's a person who has a lot of experience or whether it's, 5 or 6 people on the team who have done a little bit that can share that information
Aggregate
with
that.
the team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
I like that.
You
So
know, I want to run with the Pixar thing for a second too. The story of Toy Story is particularly interesting, right? Pixar was almost bankrupt when they introduced Toy Story and got an Academy nomination right out of the chutes, and then they went public and all sorts of goodness happened. But they had actually done it under contract with Disney, as I recall. And what they did for Toy Story 2, Disney said, hey, it doesn't have to be good because we're going to go direct to video. And so Disney at that time was into, once we've got a good blockbuster, we'll just knock out a whole bunch of crap because everybody will buy it because of the title. And Pixar worked on that for a few months until they finally said, no, we can't work on crap. And Toy Story 2 was actually better and got more awards than Toy Story 1. Because they said, you know what, if you'll let me extend it this far, they had product sense.
Yep.
They wanted to build something that they would be proud of, and not just we can make a lot of money from it, but we can be proud of the work that we've done. Maybe that's product sense.
I like that. And it could be a different configuration of how you make those decisions, whether it's led by one experienced people with some junior people or an aggregation of people who have the experience that can pull it together. I like where this is going. Paul.
I was still kind of processing. If I was able to build crap very quickly and make loads of money, I would consider that some pretty good product sense. I've been doing it the hard way. It sucks.
Well, I think that Pixar's point is we can do crap or we can do something we're proud of, and the effort is the same.
Yeah.
And their problem was they didn't know how to do crap.
Yeah.
Good
Any
point.
other thoughts on that, Paul?
Just that I might it's sort of like I don't even remember who originated this, but if product isn't doing the product job, other people just fill it in.
Yeah.
And so there's always going to be elements. No one's ever going to cover the entire spectrum. But if I used the term canvas earlier, if they've got that level of being that hub, so other people can have the fill the spokes around it and have that. But it's pretty rare you're going to see product by committee without it being crap. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there's exceptions like the Pixar story, but for the most part, you kind of need that one person who's driving the vision and in the direction of it.
And that could be a product manager, it could be a product designer, it could be a product developer, depending on the situation. But you have that one person who may ask the right questions or provide the right context. Okay, I like it. Brian.
I think you need the team to have product sense, but it's normally an individual that's driving it across the team.
Okay.
And
A
then
leader.
Yep. And then the Pixar, in my answer, I said part of it is understanding your market.
Mhm.
If your market is the cardboard thing in Walmart where they throw the $10 movies, you have
Yeah.
product sense. That's your market. You're going for it. For
that point,
Pixar, I'd say that's product pride.
Yeah.
And you're not going to find them in the cardboard box at Walmart.
I could like that. Joy.
I think a team is made up of individuals. And so like at my company, the product managers, that's all we do is identify problems, identify pain points. And so we're using product sense to help us identify those. It's the developers that develop the solution. We don't actually recommend the solution at all. So hopefully they also have a product sense in what will work best for our product and our market.
Yeah.
And
And as Brian says, I hope they also have product pride.
Yeah.
Which
I've
apparently
used,
no one who does ERP software has.
I use
Or medical portals.
well, the more difficult, the more data fields you have, the more difficult it becomes. I use the term product concept as this idea of what's the form factor. It needs to be a solution that's local versus in the cloud. It needs to be like Uber or Bloomberg or what. Too often I was coming in the B2B information world, everything wanted to be the Bloomberg for whatever your domain was. Bloomberg for engineers, Bloomberg for doctors, because everybody wanted that. And there's something to that where I think it's understanding those analogs is critical to do that. And that may be an individual person who needs to have that, just like manufacturing plants go study NASCAR pit crews to see how can they organize stuff better. Understanding analogs to me seems to be a person thing, but I think it has to come to, if the team doesn't get enabled by it, it's not sense. I don't know. Before we go to lightning round, I put one more question in here. We may not get to everybody. And I can probably cut this first half out because I think we've all would agree product sense can be learned or improved if it's a practice, if it's something that we get with more experience. What topics would you include in a product sense workshop? If we're all these people are trying to gain product sense, right? I want to build my product sense. What would be in a workshop? Steve, you go last. Brian.
I'd say ask how to ask questions.
So discovery.
How to look at products and discover things about it.
Okay.
And that could be asking others questions about it or just internally asking yourself questions.
All right. Paul.
I would say just having someone go through understanding how they would go about finding the individual boxes of a product canvas to get that sense of how you even get some of these answers and to begin thinking about things more broadly.
So just even knowing what are the types of things I need to know about for a product canvas. And so I can start figuring out where to go with this. Okay, I like that idea. Joy.
I agree with everything that people have said, but I also would kind of want to ask, so as a product manager, and I just mentioned this to somebody I worked with, I'm always saying if this product only had less mouse clicks, if this product only remembered who I was, if this product, I would like it so much more, it would be so much better. So I feel like I would ask them, whoever's taking this workshop, what do you see? Like, what if? And just get them in that kind of mode.
It's interesting because Austin Yang and some of the stuff he shared had what can you do to, and he said, look at products that you use and start thinking about what you like about them and what you would like to improve, sort of that if statement. So I love that. That's great. Cory.
Yeah, that's what I was going with. In Jules' article, he has 4 things, and I like the second one, which is basically the one you're talking about, deconstructing everyday products, because that's a question I ask a lot of people is, tell me why you love this product. What does it do for you? What does it help you do? Something in a workshop could be, okay, we're going to pick the number 1 or the number 101 app on the App Store. We're going to all go and download it. We're going to spend 5 minutes on it, and we're going to critique it. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, what could be improved. You've got 15 minutes, and do that a couple times.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I do. And actually, we did a topic of the week on product management for the products we use a while back, and there was a conversation of that type of stuff. What would you improve? On Zoom, knowing that when you're recording or not, or when you're on mute or not, whatever it may be. Steve, what would you include in your workshop?
I think I would stick. I mean, I like, as always, I like everybody else's answers. Just the concept of repeatable and whole product. As you think about deconstructing some products, you go, well, like somebody mentioned earlier, the iPod, I think, which was like 20 years ago, it didn't actually succeed until it became a whole product, where there was iTunes and there was the iTunes store and there was the iPod, and they had all the parts necessary to make it be an entire, a whole product.
Yeah.
So I think whole product and just repeatable product is where I would go.
I think that's a great answer, is the whole product concept, because too often people don't understand that. And if you don't, in having the sense to understand what are all the components, in our what is a product, we said all the components necessary to solve that problem. So
a lot of the products we see are not designed for a market, right? So they aren't market focused. They're components, they're parts, they're not products yet.
Yeah, and if your market is innovators who are going to integrate their own solutions themselves, maybe that's right. But if you're looking to hit that mainstream of the market, you need to have that whole solution. So yeah. I love that. That's great. Any last thoughts on this before we go to the lightning round? Did I hit everybody? All right. Our lightning round, which is sort of a rehash of part of the Monday question, but since all of us were new to this concept, and I think we've evolved our feelings of what is product sense. Actually, I feel a lot better about my thoughts of what is product sense on this. What is your advice to a product manager who asks how they can improve their product sense? So if you have a product manager that comes to you and says, "Hey, I'd like to improve my product sense," what's your advice to them? Starting with Brian.
Be curious and ask questions.
Ooh, I like that. Be curious and ask questions. Paul.
I think number one would be listening, spending more time with customers rather than inside the house people. And number two, if you've never done it before, do a business plan about something you have an idea about, and walk through all those steps.
I like both of those. Joy.
I don't think I have anything to add. I liked both of those questions. I'm just not sure.
Ditto.
Yes.
Okay. Joy says ditto. Cory.
Try and use more products.
Ooh, I like that.
It's not try to use more products. That's try
/ use
more
products. Yes. At least one a week.
Steve.
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Build products for the many or the one. I'm sorry. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one.
All right. I like that.
Build products for the many.
I like that. This is a tough one. I think I'm going to say what you should do is go talk to customers. And this is sort of a rehash of Brian's be curious, ask more questions, but do a target. I'm trying to learn what's happening in here. Go do 3, 4, 5 interviews and start looking for the trends, right? Learn the problems, understand them better. And if you can get better at that discovery aspect of it, that's where you're going to be able to improve. But you have to do it by talking to people. And so maybe that's a rehash of Brian's be curious and ask questions, but I'm going to target that specifically at customers in your market, because that's the way you're going to build the domain knowledge. You need to have that educated intuition, but also it's going to build one of the critical skills you have, which is, to do this on the practice side, which is the, discovery and understand problems and understand your market. So guys, thank you so much. What a great conversation. I feel actually better about this concept of product sense than I did before we started. I may have to write something on it. I always say that and I never do. I know. But we do this every week. On Monday, question goes in the community. We get some great answers. On Wednesday, we do the poll. And on Friday, we have these wonderful conversations. And I say it every week, but every week it's true. I learn, I change my opinions on stuff, and I just have a great time. So thanks to Cory, Brian, Joy, Paul, and my partner, Steve. We'll see you guys next week in the community. Take care, everybody.
Wow.